Hello, everyone, and welcome to CareersTalk. I am Sunan Sharma, an agile consultant based in Netherlands, and today we are going to discuss Scrum Master questions asked in Wells Fargo, Citibank, and PNC Bank, shared by our group member. And to help us, we have invited two guests, Kushal from Canada and Obinna from USA. It's going to be truly, a multi-country session: Netherlands, USA, and Canada. Great. Okay. But friends, before we start, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more such informative sessions. And if you find the content valuable, which I'm sure you will, don't forget to hit that like button. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome Kushal and Obina. Kushal, why don't you tell
Thank
us a
you.
little bit about yourself and then we'll go to Obina.
Yeah. Hi Sunand, I'm Kushal. I'm very much familiar to this platform. I've been to this platform, most of the times, and thanks for inviting me again. And I always say that you have been doing a thankless job to help, by helping those all nurturing Scrum masters and instilling those Scrum values on those Scrum masters. And this is a very good platform where there is a kind of learning for all those aspired Scrum masters. So that all I can say. And yeah, most of the people know me, so I don't need to reintroduce myself.
Thank you. Obina, what do you? It's your first time.
Yeah, yeah. So, first of all, I want to say thank you for letting me come on this session. I really was looking forward to it. It's been over a couple of months now, and so I'd say I really appreciate it. So, my name's Obinna Chupudum. I'm an agile consultant, specialized in agile transformation, especially for projects that want to go from waterfall to agile. And it's been a wonderful experience. It's been something that I have that passion for. Working with Kushal here, who invited me, and I just wanted to share some of my real life experiences. But like you already know,
Wonderful.
majority of the time, these things are not all found. The real life experience, you can't just find it out there. So we're here to share that with you. Thank
Wonderful,
you.
Obina. Great. Okay, let's begin. So, Kushal, shall we start?
Yeah. So
Okay. So the very first question is, I think it's pretty much practical question, and this is related with the vendor management. So let's assume that your organization has won a project from a different vendor. It's a very pretty normal scenario. So what issues and challenges would you face as a Scrum Master when you receive the handover from your previous vendors? So for example, if TCS is now transitioning out and you are the Scrum Master of, let's say, at Infosys, so both having worked for a client like JP Morgan. So in this scenario, as a Scrum Master, what precautions, challenges, strategies, knowledge transfer plan would you take, Kushal?
yeah, I mean, Sunand, I have been to similar situations and on my couple of projects. So, and precisely, Obina was with me. Thankfully, he was there with me to help me out in that as well. So, as we approach new project, we go into the new project. My first approach is to just observe that project, how exactly it is going on, and I prefer I prefer to have overlap of at least couple of months with the existing vendor. So if we have overlap of two or three sprints, then it would be helpful for us in terms of shadowing them, in terms of getting the nuances, what exactly they have been delivering, how exactly they have been working. So as a Scrum Master, I believe that one should exhibit emotional quotient, and they should have some good soft skills in order to take these things in a very dignified way. So whenever I approach a project, I always believe that we should not change the existing things straight away. We should just they might be operating in different way. We should respect that thing. Okay, that is something which is being instilled in me, and I always believe this is something which my organization has taught me over the period of time, that we should add value instead of just changing the things over the night. So that's a kind of value addition I do. So first thing I will do, I will introduce my team with the existing thing. We will set up some meet and greet. Okay, they will get to know about each other. Then that slowly, and then we'll set up some time for application walkthrough from the product owner, who is the actual responsible person for that particular product. And then once the application walkthrough is done, we'll set up some KT, we'll record those sessions. Okay. Likewise, I always ask my QAs that be vocal, whatever you are not able to understand, and even the devs as well. So entire Scrum team, in a nutshell, what they do, from technical perspective, I give a free hand to my developers and QAs, whatever they want to ask for. Okay, like either it be postman collections or existing test suits or automation scripts, whatever they have worked on. But that can only be possible if we have a interpersonal relationship with those teams. So I usually prefer to have a one-to-one interaction, and to keep open-ended interactions so that they can respond back properly. Second thing, once the application walkthrough is done, KT is done, we have recorded the session. I'll set up some time to have a reverse KT. Whatever they have told us to, are we able to deliver that thing in the future as well? So we take a reverse KT session, and we give a reverse KT session, and then we take a final sign up from them. So during this time, I also make sure, as a Scrum Master, it's my responsibility to check those gray areas, where this team is lagging. As I stated earlier, that it is about value addition. I never believed in changing the things over the night. So if at all something is going well, then we should respect that thing, and I identify those areas and keep it to myself. Once that once that other vendor moves out completely, I do a kind of PO sync up with my product owner. There we discuss about all those challenges, that what we have faced, what they faced during that area, and I try to identify those areas, and I'll show it to him that these are my observations, that where we can improve on, and we will be working on those observations throughout the tenure. I mean, for next 4 or 5 months or so. And then I'll set up some time with PO, in terms of identifying the roadmaps, in terms of identifying what roadmaps we have, what features we have planned in the next releases, and all those things. So these areas I work on. Moreover, in terms of what we can deliver to them, I have to do some kind of reporting as well. So we set up some time with the higher management, the kind of reporting they do expect, kind of a sprint report format, and then OPIs, operational performance indicator, and then KPIs, key performance indicators, or what is expected out of them, how they expect. Is it something, first time right they are expecting a kind of metric, or a deployment ratio, and then your velocities and all those things. So this is something which we need to take a consensus, which we need to take a consensus from the stakeholders, and then we will arrive on some reporting format. So this is something which I do. Challenges, yeah, there are kind of challenges. When we replace some other vendors, there are kind of challenges in terms of they are giving complete information or not, because it happens mostly. So, and we had been through similar situation, myself and Obi. So at that point of time, we have to make sure that we need to be very much polite, and we need to be very much we should not criticize what they did. Instead, we should appreciate their effort, whatever they have done, and we should always acknowledge whatever they did. Only then it is possible to get things from them, only in terms of automation scripts or whatever they have delivered, and that will help us. As a Scrum Master, I always ask from my fellow Scrum Master what was his responsibilities, day-to-day activities used to perform, and then eventually I will I'll write my roles and responsibilities. Whatever he's lagging, I will cover those areas, into, and just making it possible, and to give those sprint goals on time and deliveries on time. So this is something which I used to do, and these were the challenges.
Great, Kushal. I think you've covered everything. So if I have to just sum up very quickly, you talk about understanding the current state. So gaining a comprehensive understanding of the current state of the project that include ongoing tasks, issues, and dependencies, I guess. And then you also talk about team integration. So
Yeah,
integrating new team member from previous into the existing team. So we have to make sure that the environment, the working environment is smooth, right? And you talked about knowledge transfer session. So I think there the key is detailed handover plan. So that includes the
yeah,
timeline, key milestones, responsibilities from both the outgoing and the incoming teams, I think.
Yes.
And then you talk about collaborative transition. I think that's again an important point. Client communication you talk about documentation part, I guess. Two things. I think the one thing is risk management and the cultural thing, because risk management is again an important aspect when we do the
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
that's Sunand, that's the thing, once we are once we are completely onboarded, okay, first thing I do kind of a team onboarding page, okay, where team don't have to struggle here and there for access and all those things. And the next bit is all about, over the period of time how we are nudging in terms of, like, suppose there is a kind of things which were missing. So I try to showcase to stakeholders that how exactly our team is being agile mature. We do a kind of periodic maturity assessment as well, where we decide that these things are, are the gray areas which we have worked on periodically, and the subsequent releases, and we have improved that area. So this is something which I do, but in a very in a way that it should not bother the existing system.
Great. Thank you, Kushal. Let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, as a Scrum Master, Obinna, you mentioned about your experience with digital transformation projects, right? So what different framework are available, and how do you decide that which agile framework to use? So we have like a lot of things, right? We have, yeah, I mean, we have frame like less safe, Scrum, Kanban. So on what are the parameters or factors which you consider when you going to take any one particular framework? Obinna.
All right. So you already mentioned some of them, which I know that most Scrum Masters are used to, mostly Scrum and Kanban. And just recently, over a year or two, we started hearing about Scaled Agile. I actually categorize most of these factors into just two. Okay, so I have the project dynamics and the project characteristics. So I'm going to talk about the project dynamics. So the project dynamics looks at things like whether we're working on the same product. We have several teams working on the same product, or several teams working on different products. Also, the interdependency of these teams, and finally, the scale of the project. So I'll give you examples, real life examples. So for same product, we all know about the iPhone. No offense to those using Android. Let's just anyway. So we all know about the iPhone. We know how on a quarterly basis or twice a year they have an iOS. Now the iOS, if you go on it, you can see that they have several apps. They have the Safari for Apple. They have the maps. They have different apps. And they have one goal to make sure that they get to a particular fixed release date, and all these apps have to be completed. Now, mind you, they have separate teams working together with one set goal. So in that case, I would recommend Scaled Agile. Why would I recommend Scaled Agile? Because they have same program, okay, for that product. And with that, you have to implement PI. There is no way you can tell them to go independently. Now, I'll give you another example of a project or a product that has different teams, and they work separately or individually. We know that Facebook acquired WhatsApp, has Facebook platform, and other different products. Okay, in that case, they can go ahead and just work with less. Okay, now they don't have the same goal. They might have same dependencies, which might be the back end database, CRM, which might be Salesforce, the same APIs and all of those. But at the end of the day, you can't take the same PI plan because they're not trying to get, they might have different release dates. They might have different customers or consumers that you're pointing at, and that's where you could use less. I also talked about the project's characteristics. Okay, so that brings me to the three characteristics, or two characteristics that look at. No, sorry, three. It's the product enhancement, product development, and also support. Okay, for product development, we know very well that you're driving and getting an MVP. Usually there's a product, but we've not actually gotten anything out of it. So we need to build this product in increments. Okay, usually you have to tie that to Scrum. Okay, now If you're going with a product enhancement as well, you know very well that there's a new feature you're trying to put onto that project or that product, you can use Scrum as well. Now, support is a little bit tricky because most of the dependencies play a huge role when using a huge part using the support characteristics. I'll give you an example. We might have several teams in a particular enterprise that depend on just one API team. Okay, and their request comes randomly, and most of these are time-based. So if you're assigned that back-end team to work with, your best bet will be going with a Kanban because that's more of work in progress. Okay, it's time sensitive. You need to work on as it's coming. You're taking it. It doesn't have time to sit in the product backlog and you refine and do all the get the definition of done and all of those. Okay, now same goes to people who work with the database. Same goes to people who work in the application support. Application support might be people who are responsible for working on critical issues that you find in the production environment. And finally, I talked about people who work in the CRM projects, like I stated Salesforce. They also work with support because these guys are working on teams that literally support other teams. Okay, so that's basically how I'm going to categorize them. So if you analyze a project and put these things into consideration, you'd find out that one of them will work based on either the dynamics or the characteristics of that project. Thank you.
Great, Obinna. So if I have to just summarize what you mentioned, so we talk about project characteristics, where you mention about the nature of the project, its complexity, and the type of the work that is involved. So, for example, project development, maintenance, continuous improvement, and then I think the other important point is the scale of the project. So you have to assess the scale of the project that include the number of teams, the geographic distribution, and the organizational structure. And then you also mention about organizational needs. So, for example, we have to align the choice of a framework with the broader organizational goal, their culture, and the readiness for the agile practices, how mature they are in terms of agile way of working. And the other point I think you mentioned about the client and stakeholder involvement. So we have to also evaluate the level of the client and the stakeholder engagement that is required for a project success. So I think these are the key takeaways for me. So yeah, thank you, Obinna. Let's
No
move
problem.
on. Okay, so the next one is about the product goal and the sprint goal. So why these two are important in Scrum, and if you can provide an example from your past project, like, okay, what is the product goal, and if you can give an example of sprint goal
What is a sprint goal?
and the product
Okay,
goal.
so when explaining this, I like to call the product goal the mother and the sprint goal the child. Okay, look at it from that analogy. The product goal is the overall objective of that product. Okay, whether be it an enhancement, whether be it you trying to get an MVP, it's what you're trying to drive, what the actual product you're trying to send out to your consumers or your customers. Giving a typical example, you can come on an e-commerce website and say that you're trying to give the customers a new way of payment. So what do I mean by new way of payment? Probably they have only credit card and now you want to bring in other third-party payment channels like PayPal and all that. That might be the product goal. Now, how do you achieve this? Breaking that product goal into requirements, PBIs, and actually asking yourself whether you use the vertical or the horizontal slicing to get this actual product goal into bits and pieces. And each of those bits are what you're going to be trying to achieve within the sprint. That brings me down to the sprint goal. So the sprint goal now is what are the objectives that you're trying to achieve within a given sprint. Okay, now you can say within the sprint, all we're trying to do is take care of the form which the customer is going to fill before they start the process of the payment. The next sprint might be the integration between the back end payment, probably the endpoints are going to be covered, the third sprint, and all those. There are cases whereby you can have a sprint that would be just for tests. There's some organizations that go as far as having just a regression sprint. There's some organizations that can go as dedicating a sprint that will be just for vulnerability. Okay, whenever they carry out a scan on the entire platform and see whether it's mostly for security purposes. So, like I stated earlier, the product is the mother, and the sprint goal is the child. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a great analogy, mother and child. So the product goal basically represents the long-term objective of the product. So it basically provide a vision, the direction for the product team to help to understand the purpose and the desired outcome. And for the sprint goal, it's provide a short-term focus for the team during a specific sprint, right? So it basically help the
Sprint, yes.
team to understand the purpose of the upcoming sprint and why certain features or tasks are prioritized and in certain order, right? So I think you just sum it pretty well. So great, Obina. Let's move on. Okay, so the next one is based on your experience as a Scrum Master. If you just want to share some top challenges or frequently faced challenges during a sprint and how you resolve them, that's again an important thing. So, Obina,
Okay,
what are the
so when
challenges?
it comes
Yeah.
to challenges, is there like a specific part or any form of challenge that will face or frequent challenges being faced and how to okay. So I'll give one which is it's more on an enterprise level. Okay. So we have issues whereby during sprints either some parts of the back end tools starts failing, probably when it's more technical. They try to reach and they get errors like 505, 504, and all of those. So carrying out root cause analysis was the first step in mitigating that particular challenge or that particular risk. What we did before we got, we created an SOP document for that. What we did was figure out, I think we used a Splunk, that the tool called Splunk, carrying out the log. We found out what exactly was causing it. Now, what we did in that case was solve it. Like I said earlier, get the SOP, and once we get the SOP, make sure that these things don't repeat itself again. And we one of the causes that we got was the fact that after every patch or server upgrade, these actual back-end services do fail. So I took an extra step to ask the release management team for their release calendar. Okay, and based on that, I have the dates that these patches were going to occur, future dates. So we took it upon ourselves to have planned test days. The QA personnel, whenever we're having our sprint planning, we take that into consideration after checking the calendar to see if these days they're going to be patches, and have a test immediately after the patch, because these patches happen overnight. So the first thing when they come in the morning, while the others are still working, the developers are still working, is to go in and test all these back-end services and make sure that they're up and running. So that was a way we were able to take care of that and prevent future occurrence of the same issue. Thank you.
Great, Obina. Thank you for that. And to our audience, if someone is going to ask you this question, challenges, I would suggest you there are like 2-3 challenges which every Scrum Master will face or every project will face. The very first one is regarding the dependencies. So you can have some external dependencies, onto some other teams or different upstream, downstream. So you can always use this as an example. You will always have a challenges with the communication. Now communication with within your team, communication of you with your team, communication of you with your manager, with your client. So always you can, it's like a safe answer which you can always use, I mean,
True.
these kind of things. And of course the third one is regarding the changing requirements. So that's a problem everyone face. So you can always, take these kind of examples and you will be through, I think.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
great. Thank you, Obina, for that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so it's again a question. Let's say if you could just share some of your experience as a Scrum Master with some specific example. For example, what are the different challenges in ensuring that your team is adhered to the Scrum values? So that is one of the challenge which most of the time, especially the new team faces. So if you can help me, like what actions you could have taken to address any deviation from the Scrum values and the outcome of those actions, Kushal. You are on mute, Kushal.
Sorry.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
bad. So
Okay.
most of the time, Sunan, when we work with different teams, we do observe a kind of challenges. And as a Scrum Master, it's my responsibility to instill those Scrum values within the team. Suppose if team is working and they might have worked in some other environment which is non-agile. So if they are being onboarded, so they do lack a few of the things. Like initially it happened with me that there was a challenge. I mean, that was already an established team. I joined that team as a Scrum Master, and I mean, it was not the entire team that we were working over there. It was individually me who replaced the existing Scrum Master, and they were working and they were overcommitting few of the stories, so it was impacting our velocity. So at that point of time, uh, management was out of they were chasing me for that, why they have so many spillovers and all those. So I thought of, I discussed this thing with my dev lead and all. So they said that we have certain new joiners in the team, and we were not able to pull off all those stories whatever we are committing. So at that point of time, I told them that whatever we are committing, we should complete that. So in a way, I try to instill that commit value within them by just uh, introducing a new thing, that's a kind of new event which is not in Scrum book, that is sprint capacity planning. So where we used to discuss who is available and who is not available, and based on that we used to keep the focus factor. So earlier the focus factor was very high what they have committed, but eventually when I had a meeting with him, so I tried to reduce the focus factor, keeping the fact that there are a couple of new joiners in the team, and eventually whatever we were committing with, slowly and gradually we were completing all those stories. So in a way, this is something, a commitment Scrum value, which is being exhibited by all the team members. Then there was kind of a, when you work in a cross vendor team and people from different geography works in a project, so there is a kind of lingual barrier within the team. So in a retrospective, I always observe that there are few folks that are not that much interactive. So I had a personal discussion with them, and then I came to know that they are not that much comfortable with English, because there were few of the folks, they were from some other countries, non-native to English, so they were not that much familiar. So they were a bit hesitant in expressing their opinions. So what I did, I had a discussion with them. I gave them confidence that be open with your points in retro. Just come up with something, and in a way, what I did, I just arranged a session where in the retro we had a video retro for the first time. So I introduced them that they are very much important to this team and they have given this opinion on those, and slowly and gradually they started expressing their opinion, and that is something where I believe I successfully instilled that openness in my teammates. So that was another thing. And as focus is something which I always prioritize, this is the most important thing. Keeping in mind that sprint goal is something which we have to achieve in any way. So most of the time, when new team gets onboarded, new team members gets onboarded, so they always reach out to the senior most people for the access and all those things. So instead of getting them disturbed, they should be focusing on sprint goal. That is what my objective is. So whenever I start a new project, I always ask for, do you have any team onboarding page? I always create a team onboarding page where all the accesses will be there. That will be like a one-stop solution, where everybody just click on that page and get all those accesses, whatever the Jira access, Jenkins, Git, and then and who is responsible for what, instead of reaching out to each and everyone over here and there, because eventually if it impacts the sprint goal, and they complained about that, okay, I couldn't complete just this thing just because I was helping him out with that access and this access. So that is a kind of thing I always try to maintain with in my team, that focus value. And then there is courage. Yeah, courage is very much important. So then it happened previously with me. It's like I think it was a couple of years back. Yeah. So in that sprint planning, whenever we are doing some work in between the sprint, there is a change in scope, and that is very much frequent, and most of the scrum master might have faced this problem as well. So in between there comes a thing called you have to accommodate this particular story, you have to deprioritize something from there. So as a I mean, we do mostly it comes from the business, but it is like most of the time people, what they do, they just replace the existing stories with a similar story point, and they do keep that particular story and prioritize that thing. But in my concern is it's about, I always ask my developer, if you are not confident to pull it off or to complete that within that sprint, be courageous, be vocal that I am not able to do that just because we need extra time, maybe in the next sprint, or if at all it needs to be done, then we need extra effort. Maybe instead of one story, you have to take out two stories out of that current sprint scope to complete that. So this is something which I always say, that be courageous in whatever you want to deliver, you can deliver, and be vocal about that. So it's a mutual consensus that it was initially it was like whatever PO has prioritized, we used to take that. I mean, before me, but I asked my developers to be vocal and to be courageous, to speak out that it won't be possible in this sprint, and if it is possible, then we have to take extra two stories out of the scope. So that is the kind of thing I have been teaching, or I have been instilling in within my team, is with my experience.
Great. Great, Kushal. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on. So the next question is, like, as a Scrum Master, you have assigned to a team that lack expertise working in a agile environment, and they have a history of a poor code quality, right? So as a Scrum Master, how will you ensure that your team become a true agile team? And the follow-up question is, as a Scrum Master, how do you plan to reduce the number of defect that is injected into the production environment? So that's the two questions. Maybe one you can pick, Kushal, first one, and the second, Obina maybe can pick. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very common thing into day-to-day environment, where we get to see plenty of uh, defects are being introduced to the production once it goes into the production. And lately it was there in my project as well. So what we did, Sumant, from my perspective, we identified those areas where we are seeing most of the production defects and all those. So I set out with my application engineer, or you can say solution architect. So we had a meeting. So we prioritized all those areas. I mean, and we dedicatedly gave some bandwidth to refactor those areas. So what I did, I segregated my backlog into two parts. That is, some sprint deliverables, and I created a new sprint within my backlog, that is code refactoring. So all those areas will be identified by the dev lead or application engineer or solution architect. They will identify those areas where we are mostly getting the production defects, and then eventually we will be creating some technical stories. And in the from the next sprint itself, we started picking up some 30% of our bandwidth. We started giving it to the code refactoring. So in that way, over 2 or 3 sprints, we improved a lot, and we did a lot of code refactoring. In that way, it's like not we are not doing the actual sprint deliverables. We did that as well. Along with, we gave some percentage to that, the bandwidth percentage to code refactoring as well, because it is very much necessary once a product goes into the production and all. And eventually we saw a drop in the defect density as well doing so.
Okay, Obina, you want to add anything on this?
My colleague has spoken on most of them, but I'm just going to touch the two questions again, just to add to them. I know the first one was, how will you ensure that the team becomes true agile? Okay, so Kushal, who I call an agile coach, he doesn't he tries to bring himself lower than that, but I know that's humility. But we carry out something called the Agile Maturity Assessment. Okay, it's a tool whereby you try and get your team from the crawl stage up onto the walking stage, the running, then up onto the fly stage. Now, this Agile Maturity Assessment usually It comes in an Excel sheet. There are some other companies who have already programmed applications that you can use. You're advised to carry out this assessment once or twice within a month. Sometimes you can have that during the retrospective. The goal is to see that whatever is being coached to the team, they have started implementing it. So you're checking off some boxes. An example is when it comes to the part of the developers, you see if they are carried out the good code reviews, if they're having pair code reviews, if they're carried out, like he stated, the refactoring and all of those. If whichever one they've done, you take them to the next stage. If they're carrying out tests, that's when they're meant to carry it out. That's one stage. So the final stage for the test aspect might be automated tests. Once they've gotten from just carrying out unit tests, QA tests, and regression tests, and gotten to automated tests, you can say for the test section, they've gotten to the fly. Okay, so you've gradually taken them from one stage of growth to the other. So there's so many factors that are being spoken about in that too. The second one, which is how do we reduce the amount of defects that are being injected into the production environment? There are a couple of them. There are many of them, but there are a couple I'm going to talk about now. I refer to one as a multidimensional testing. Multidimensional test, I say it's you test it in the various lower environments. Okay, I encourage the developers to carry their unit test in the dev environments, and when we get to the QA environment, they carry out the QA test and also the regression test. So making sure that these tests are being done as at when. Very, very mandatory. Now, integrating this test into your definition of done, perfect, because you make sure that all these have been done before you say, okay, finally, we've completed or we're done with this PBI. We have the test-driven development. I encourage my developers to carry out automated tests while they're actually developing. That way you have limited bugs or defects that might even find its way even to other lower environments. Okay, this was actually implemented recently, and we were able to reduce the defects by 90%. The reason it wasn't 100% is because most of the defects that we found that made its way to production were defects that were as a result of probably SSOs into third-party implementations or third-party websites and all of those. Training skill development is very key, because you might have QA personnel who are very good at doing manual tests, and you want to get them, like, it goes hand in hand with the maturity conversation we just had. You want to train them to be able to carry out automated tests. For rich organization, I say the word rich because it's expensive. You might also go ahead to introduce CI/CD, which is the DevOps continuous integration and continuous deployment, because they come with automated testing. If there's a failure when there's a test, it reverts back and all of those. So it's once the pipeline is working perfectly, it's kind of is better than a human actually carrying out the test, because these are all automated from start to finish. So there are other factors, but these are some of them that if you're able to implement, you should definitely see less defect in the production environment. Thank you.
Wonderful, Obinna. Thank you, Kushal and Obinna, for that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so this is a kind of a scenario-based question, and I think it's pretty much in a real life project also we can face this same kind of similar problem. So let's say you have recently joined a new Scrum team, and you notice that your team members are not actively participating, or they're providing the input during the retrospective. So the complete atmosphere is quiet, and they don't discuss anything, honestly. So as a Scrum Master, how do you approach this kind of situation, and what kind of different steps or action would you take to encourage more open communication and engagement within the team during the retrospective? So yeah, and how do you create that kind of environment where team members feel heard and they are comfortable, they can share their concerns, their ideas, all those things. So that's for you, Obinna.
Yeah. So it's funny because I had this conversation with Kushal some time back when we were trying to transform the teams. But I'll start with observation and an assessment of the team. So usually when I join a new team, especially a team that is not new to Agile, what I mean is a team that is not in the forming stage. It means they know what Agile is about. I attend a retrospective, but I don't come there with actual retrospective gadgets or frameworks or tools. I just want to listen to the team, hear them, understand what they think about the retrospective, hear their perspective about the retrospective and all of those. Now, judging from what they say, judging from their body cue, I can go ahead as to coach them on the importance of the retrospective. Because I've had experience whereby a developer once told me that he doesn't see the need for the retrospective. All you need is for you to give me the link to the board, and I'm going to go put my idea, tell you what is wrong, and just take on the create the action item and go back and fix it. So making the team understand that the retrospective, I call it an opportunity for everyone to be heard. Okay, you have a pain point during a sprint. I want you to be able to look forward to the retrospective, and you're rest assured that whatever you bring to the table for a conversation is going to be treated. Now, one major problem most Scrum Masters, I made that a mistake before, is to believe that all you need to do is come there and you break the ice by telling a joke and all that. It's going to be redundant at some point. They know he's just going to try and make us laugh. So the first step is, if we've carried out a retrospective, gotten action items, you've given them expected dates that you feel you're going to take care of those action items. They want to see you come back, giving them results, status. Okay, this item we talked about, this asset you requested, it's in progress. The management has said we're going to get it by the end of this time. This tool that you logged for, we've said we're going to get it at this time. This has been granted and all that. It's going to give them trust. They're going to believe that you're a servant leader. This person is going to, has come to help us take care of every issue we're going to have. So they'll be looking forward to telling you more things, okay? Having that conversation with you. I also noticed that celebrating success, giving compliments also gives them that drive. Okay, you don't just overlook every time one of your developers or one of your team members have gone over and beyond. I've been in a situation whereby a developer took on a task that was requested by a different team member, but they needed support. Now he had this capacity already taken care of, and he knew he had to complete the PBIs that were assigned to him. But he literally knew that whatever they requested was something that would overall help the organization. So he took it in on his spare time, making sure he didn't interfere with the sprint, worked on it, and handed it over to them. That was being talked about during the retrospective. So he said, and I also wrote a letter to an email to my program manager to say, hey, I need you to give a shout out to this guy just so that he knows that he's being appreciated. And it was done. And you can see every other person wanted to do this. Finally, I always want to do my one-on-one. That's away from the retrospective, but I want to understand what everyone thinks individually, because you might have that conversation with everybody, and there's some people who might have some pain points they want to share with you, and you have to make sure they know that it's confidential, that whatever they share is you trying to bring about a result, they don't want to be victimized. They don't want you to come and talk about what they don't want to hear it outside. They just want to see results. Okay, so if you can put all these things into place, I think the final part before I forget is not sticking to one type of retrospective. Okay, try as much as possible to use variations. You can come to a retrospective, and maybe because of a defect that you guys fought to fix during the sprint, you can bring just that into the retrospective. I've heard people say, oh, I just used the 4 L's, okay? Or someone say, I just used www, what went well, what went, and you keep using it. Like I said, it's going to get to a time when they already know what to expect. But try to be versatile, try to change, and you see they will be looking forward to the retrospective and they will actually speak. Thank you.
Great, wonderful, Obinna. Thank you for that.
I want to add 2 things into that.
Yeah,
Sunil.
please. Yeah, Kushal.
See, most of the time I have observed, with Scrum Masters, they all, in previous projects as well, so they start retro with a negative thing that we didn't do this, we didn't do that, they are shouting on a team. Most of them, you should not do like that. Instead, you should say that we have delivered a very good thing, we have done very well, but there are some hiccups that happened in between. There are some challenges which we can, cover up, which we can work together collaboratively, and which we can improve on going forward. So I mean, this is the way ideally we should, I mean, as a scrum master, this would be my approach whenever I start any retrospective. And the second thing might be a bit funny. If at all you feel that somebody is not that much interactive in retrospective, I ask that person to run the retro on my behalf. that makes the person active, and it will be like, okay, everybody will be, everybody will get to know that, okay, after a while their turn might also come.
In fact, it's a good thing, and I already implemented them in a couple of my projects.
Mhm.
In the beginning, I do retrospective, but then over the period of time, I give that responsibility to all the team members. So everyone is
Yeah,
supposed to come, and they will come up with their own ideas, and they will have to conduct the retrospective. So I will be
exactly.
just there to mentor them, guide them, help them, coach them in case it's required. But then in the longer run, it's definitely going to help the individuals as well as the complete team. So I think it's a good approach, Kushal.
Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, I think friends, we have still a lot of questions. So definitely we are going to create a part 2 for that. Okay. I know there are multiple questions, but then yeah, I think we already spent like 45 minutes. So I think let's close this session here only. So thank you, friends, whoever is watching this. We hope that you found this session useful and interesting. And if you like it, please smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. And we look forward to having you in our next session. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Obinna and Kushal, for joining us today.
Thanks,
Thank you
Sunan, for
very much.
inviting us.
Thank you. I really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
guys. Thank you.